Hello and welcome. I think we're still waiting on a few people, but I will on a tight timeline, so we will get started. Firstly, as we've got attendees from all over the world, I better start by saying good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. So hopefully we've covered all bases and all time zones. The running order today, obviously we're here to discuss innovation in the aquarium space with a particular focus on digital innovation. I think the best way to structure it is to talk about the who, the what, the where, the when, the why, and then most importantly the how. So I'm not going to waffle on for too much longer. I will pass you over to our panel of experts, and that's the who. So if we start, we're lucky enough today to have with us Conrad Melsop, who is a specialist in design and build of commercial aquariums. We have Professor Simon Thrush, who is a leading marine biologist. And we have Melanie Langlotz, who is the CEO of GeoAR, specialists in digital solutions for a variety of different spaces, but today, most importantly, the aquarium space. So I will start by handing over to Conrad. And Conrad, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, give a brief introduction. We'll go around the table and then I will start firing some questions at you all.
Sure. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. So as Sam has mentioned, I'm Conrad. I'm from a company called Marinescape. As a company, we sort of based ourselves starting in the 1980s, where our founder and my father, Ian Melsop, was business partners with Kelly Taltons here and developed the aquarium here in Auckland, which turned into a great success. Based on that, the company has then continued to design and develop aquariums around the world. We've done roughly about 30 projects, and roughly, I think it's about 15 different countries, ranging from Asia up to North America, Europe, and the Middle East. We generally provide a whole turnkey service, and as this is on innovation, we try to innovate as we do each new aquarium, because this is what brings in visitors. This is what makes any aquarium successful.
Fantastic. I've already jotted down some questions I've got for you on that. So we'll carry on with the introductions and then we'll jump into some of the questions. So over to you, Simon.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Simon Thrush. I'm a professor of marine ecology at the University of Auckland Institute of Marine Science. Auckland University is the biggest university in New Zealand and it has a strong focus on marine research. And as part of that, we have established the Discovery Centre, which is essentially a research-based facility that allows us to engage in outreach with the general public and enhance ocean literacy, particularly around marine conservation and marine futures.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And then last but by no means least, over to you, Melanie, to explain a little bit about your experience.
Kia ora, and good morning, evening, afternoon, like you said. It's fantastic to have a global audience. So GeoAir has been around for over 9 years now. We predominantly do digital solutions for government departments, meaning that we take the messages that the government wants to get to the public to educate them about, for instance, climate change, disaster preparedness, or even what's happening in the oceans. So we're working, for instance, with the government department, NIWA, that are responsible for the oceans in New Zealand. And we're developing simulations or interactive experiences for the public to learn about critical subjects like sea level rise, flooding, all sorts of things. And so I'm super excited about working in the aquarium world because it is just so unseen and not everybody is diving. So, it's fantastic that we can use technology to bring some of the complex experiences to the public.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Right. So, Conrad, I'm going to circle straight back around to you because I started making some notes. So on the subject of Marinescape, so the company's been around for a very long time and you've obviously got a fantastic wealth of experience. Can you tell us a little bit about your most challenging projects over the years?
Well, yes, we've had a few challenging ones. Obviously, the first one which we did was Kelly Talton's, and that was the, as I say, the beginning of the new worldwide sort of modern aquarium. Up until then, there'd been like glass exhibits, small acrylic windows, but it wasn't sort of until around that stage when large acrylic windows started getting developed. Specifically, then was thermoforming. So on that project, they managed to thermoform the panels and make them into a walk-through tunnel, which just gave the visitors a much more in-depth experience of what it's like to be under the ocean without having to wear scuba gear. As per like some of the more challenging projects, I can sort of name two here. There was a project that was done in Beijing back in the 1990s. And the location that the client had proposed was in the middle of a park where there was already a lake. And so what ended up transpiring was that we emptied the lake, excavated the entire area, constructed the aquarium underneath, and then put a shallower lake back on top so that the whole facility is actually underground, completely out of sight under this lake, with only the entry hall noticed. The second challenging one that we have done was we constructed an aquarium in Cleveland, in Ohio, in the United States. And this was in the basement of a historical building, which had certain regulations on what we were allowed to do with the space. So this included the things as the whole building was a brick old powerhouse. And so when we were running any of these, the pipelines or the air ducts or any of this, supporting equipment to make the facility run, we weren't allowed to do simple things such as drill into the brick itself. We had to carefully place everything so that all the supports was through the mortar or suspended elsewhere. Protective coatings on all the traditional timber. The actual exhibit has a couple of the old timber columns located inside of the main tank. So yeah, I mean, these are some of the challenging. I mean, every project has its own challenges. These are just some of the more interesting ones that we've come across.
So do you want to tell us a little bit about the sort of technology that the big aquariums are requesting and are offering?
Sure. So the original sort of technology that they've started to, not started to, has been in place for a long time was the digital signage. And this replaced your standard static display boards, which you come along, read, and then move on. So obviously with the digital signage, it's interactive, it's touchscreen. People can come, they can read, they can swipe through, they can flip through. I mean, it's not new technology now, but this was sort of the first delve into technology in the industry. Nowadays, it's got a lot more advanced, and so then people are looking for this AR, this VR. The big thing at the moment is projection mapping inside aquariums. So obviously you project on the surface, and then you've got certain interaction. Whereas people try and chase a fish around on the water, it just gives them more of a feel about the environment they're in. Right? It's another level, and this is becoming much more commonplace, and it is actually a requirement because, as I mentioned before, the wow factor of these aquariums is becoming a bit less when you look at what a traditional aquarium was. And this is purely because as we reach out to more and more people, they have seen the large acrylic windows. They have seen majority of the animals that can be kept. There's not much more that can be gone. It's sort of in that direction. And so to keep the visitor numbers up, to keep people interested in the industry, there needs to be this change. And so this digital explosion is it's going to help us a lot. So projection mapping, interactive displays, and then we've started some facilities. They have what would be off-the-shelf VR rides. They're not so much what I would say is the educational or sort of made specifically for the industry. And so I believe in that area there's a lot of work that can be done, which could help both on the entertainment side and the education side.
And presumably, with the larger take up around interactive exhibits, that presents a whole nother series of challenges in terms of trying to prevent bottlenecks, amount of time that people spend at any one exhibit. I'm assuming that has to be a huge consideration when you're looking at these solutions.
Yes, I mean that's not something new in the industry. Generally, because of the way the aquariums work, you'll have one large window, or you have some smaller windows, and it always was bottlenecks. So we had to work around that with the design of the architecture to make sure that if people are stopping at one section, then they can continue on past that and possibly loop back to it if needed, if that area is too busy. So yeah, while it creates more challenges, that area is not something specifically new. It does come down to, as you say, time though, because we have calculations roughly how long people would look at each exhibit. Whereas if you're going for digital, that can actually be much more controlled because you know the length of the show. You're not so much guesstimating how much time people are going to spend at each exhibit.
That makes sense. And presumably, technology may actually start to provide a solution to that bottlenecking if you've got a bit more control over the interactive experiences and you can help to guide your visitors to less busy parts of the aquarium. Then maybe that's the next evolution. But I'm going to stop picking on you for a little while, and we'll move on
Sure.
to Simon for a second. Thank you very much, Conrad, and there are going to be plenty more questions, I'm sure. Simon,
not a problem.
So I have some questions, particularly about your experience and your involvement in the Marine Science Department and the Lake Discovery Centre Aquarium. So can you tell us a little bit about your work there? And then I've got some questions I'd like to ask you.
Yeah, so we're a university-based facility, so a lot of what we're doing is really about teaching. It's about trying to enhance ocean literacy. It's about trying to outreach the research we do. And it's also about giving our students and early career researchers an opportunity to communicate and engage with their research projects to the general public rather than just within the science community. So all of these things are really mutually beneficial activities that spin off between the research activities and our capacity to engage more broadly across society with what we do. So in that context, then, all of the technology is really important to us in the research space, but it's also really important to us in the teaching space. And that is especially true when we're trying to teach people about how our oceans work. So it's not so much for us to say, oh, look, there's a penguin, there's a whale, there's a great white shark. Those are wonderful animals and they deserve our all and our support. But we're really trying to teach people about how the place works, because essentially we're in a trifecta of environmental crises. And many of the animals that we work on live in environments, and the animals themselves are often quite tiny, but these are the animals that drive the way the world works. 500 odd million years ago, animals started to crawl into marine sediments and the planet changed. Yet all these things, they're not charismatic, they're not big, they're not pretty. Well, I think they're pretty, but that's just me. And so trying to get people to think about these things so that their sense of understanding the environment, how it's likely to change and what the implications of that are, and where we find solutions becomes a major, major challenge for us. And really that's what we've been trying to do with the Sandflat Hero app.
So do you want to tell us a little bit, and particularly about Sandflat Heroes? How does it work? I mean, you've explained the need and why. Give us a run through.
Yeah, so this came about with some discussions with Mel and her colleagues about how do we tell a story about what's going on within the sediments that we find in harbors and estuaries around the world. And we wanted to do this in a way that was interactive, that drew kids' attention into these ecosystems, because they can go and play in these places. And so part of the app's role is to really illustrate some of the animals that live in the sediment, illustrate some of the features that you see on the sediment surface that are generated by the animals, and get the kids to want to actually stop off in the estuary on their way back into the city and go and have a play and, you know, see these features for themselves, stick their fingers down a crab burrow, all of those kind of things, and start to engage with the place, because so much of what we do now is removed from nature, and being engaged with nature is massively important. And these kinds of activities are a way of drawing people back into that space. And, you know, in many countries in the world, around many urban environments, the only place that you're easily going to engage with nature is in a harbor and estuary. You know, you can get on a plane and fly to a tropical rainforest or to an Arctic tundra or whatever, but the local place, the place you go on a Sunday afternoon, is an estuary. And so giving people an understanding of those places, you know, often they get valued because they're important for bird watching and for fishing and maybe shellfish collecting, but how do they work and why is that important to us, and what do they do that means something to humans is a real challenge. So this is why we started to work with Sandflat Heroes. We chose different kinds of animals that do different kinds of things in the sediment.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, what we came up with was this application, which I think we're just going to show you of a quick video of right now.
Fantastic.
Being in the Discovery Centre, we have a lot of different interactive things, from microscopes to, you know, touch pools and touch tanks. But to actually teach about the soft sediment is quite difficult because a lot of these animals live under the surface.
So we looked at the app as really an opportunity to tell stories about the unseen world. It allows us to miniaturize ourselves and imagine what it will be like to be living in the sand. The creatures in the sandflats are really important. Without the animals living in the sandflats, we would miss being able to store carbon in the sediments. We would miss the capacity of the estuary to clean itself up.
Oh, there's the bamboo worm. See, look how cool that is. Wow, see, look, that's what they do in the oxygen.
Really, we wanted to fire up their imagination, and through that sense of exploration that comes, we wanted to get people to poke around, think about what's going on, and through that learning and fascination, we hope to inspire people and get them interested in thinking about conservation and wise management of their harbours and estuaries.
What I was going to say is, Mel, obviously, I know I haven't come to you directly yet, but as you and your team were involved in Sandflat Heroes, you know, and if you've got anything to add, please jump in and explain about the process as well. One of the questions I do have for you, Simon, is what's the response been like from visitors to Sandflat Heroes, the general public response?
Yeah, actually, it's been really positive and really good. What we find in the Discovery Centre is that people like engaging in really different ways. And they do like interactive things. They do like the being able to touch things, to play with microscopes, to do things. But the Sandflat Heroes app it allows us to get people into an environment that they would not experience. And, you know, as a person who's interested in marine spaces, traveling the world, you often end up visiting museums, aquaria, and I have to say, you know, this sandflat ecology, this is the dominant habitat on the planet. This is the system that makes the carbon cycle work, that makes the nitrogen cycle work. So it's not just some trivial little thing. And yet there are no decent displays that I've seen in aquaria in Europe and North America that really get at this. And so part of that motivation of this isn't done is something that I think is really important. You know, we often focus in drawing kids' attention to the mighty and powerful. So, you know, dinosaurs are a big deal, right? But and the dinosaurs have been on the planet for an awful long time before they went extinct. But these shellfish that are, you know, like the ones in the app, these are animals that have been on the planet for much, much longer. So, you know, you go to a museum in Victoria and Vancouver Island, you can see these fossilized shells that are 300 million years old. You can go to the harbors and estuaries on Vancouver Island. You can see those same animals there right now.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty cool that these guys have been around for so long, survived for so long, and yet, you know, they're not the superstars that are grabbing all the
Yeah.
attention, and not to draw away from the power and the splendor of those kind of animals, but understanding how the system works is so important to us today because we
Yeah.
face so many challenges.
So a couple of things there then. Firstly, just from looking at the slides, this is something that's accessed through people's own devices rather than having a console. So one of my questions was going to be about applications in a post-COVID world where we thought we were never going to be able to shake hands with anybody ever again. So it's nice to see a kind of workaround. And I mean, where I live in Hawaii, you know, COVID is still very much a topic of conversation. People are still very, very cautious and wear masks and practice social distancing where appropriate. I know that varies wildly depending on location, but are you seeing a positive response to people being able to utilize their own devices and be engaged as part of a group, but without having to share a communal touchscreen?
Yeah. So we do provide some tablets for people that, you know, if they want to use those, or they can use their own device, whichever. And again, it is, you know, some people choose one option over the other, so it's good they have options. The other thing we wanted to do with the app down the line was be able to both promote the center, but also promote the research and the activities by sending a Christmas card to school teachers, which would have the QR code on it, that they could then use that to get, so they don't have to come up to Lee, 100 kilometers north of Auckland City, to actually engage in the process. We can start to pull people in remotely and get them thinking about these things. So we've been trying, you know, the technology here gives us the flexibility of application that, you know, as Conrad was saying, you don't get from a printed poster board on a wall.
And it provides that level of marketing and outreach, which is, yeah, fantastic. And I think there's clearly multiple applications for that. And so talking about the ecology and the fact that, you know, this is something that's a shared ecology globally, this is relevant wherever you go. Presumably that makes this a fairly, I use the term loosely, Mel, easy to export product. I know obviously I'm oversimplifying things as always. I generally tend to know enough to be dangerous. But clearly, if this is something that is a global a global lesson, then this is something that could be very easily translated and adapted by aquariums all over the world. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, totally. You know, the actual species might change a little bit, but if you think about the basic groups of animals that are represented here, unless you were dealing with some desperately polluted place, I would expect you'd be able to find very similar animals to this pretty much around the world, you know.
Fantastic.
So that means that we've got a basic structure that can be used, and you know, you might change the names of things, you might change the dialogue boxes that you can see coming up on the screen here a little bit, but you know, it's not going to have to change that much to adapt this to fit into, you know, what you're seeing in the Varden Sea, what you're seeing in San Francisco Bay, you know, what you're seeing in Shanghai. So all of that is it's a good kind of base layer for adaptation and development, and and what have you. And again, that's something that we would hope to do with this is to be able to take it further, not necessarily to make this that much more complicated, but use this as a bridge into doing other activities that again get people engaged and again get them thinking about the connections, the networks that really make ecology and ecosystems a really, really big deal.
So, I mean, presumably then there's been a tremendous amount of involvement from yourself and your team in terms of the content. So that's the important part of the collaborative piece. Obviously, the digital assets are provided by GeoAR and the work that they've done, but I'm guessing all of the content that's gone in has been provided by you, or at least signed off by you.
Yeah, no, totally. And, it's been a lot of fun actually, because what we did for the content is we got together with the people that work in the Discovery Centre who are used to engaging with the general public, with school kids and so forth, and my research group who are researching these animals in different kinds of contexts. And we had a lot of fun kind of thinking about, how do we represent these things? What's really important about what they do? How does, this animal's activities complement that animal's activities? So it was a lot of fun. And it was great for the students to be thinking in a slightly removed and simplified and abstract way, rather than, diving into the weeds of what they're doing. So it's really good exercise.
Fantastic. So Mel, I actually, from a technical perspective, one of my questions was around the effectively reskinning, if that's the right term for it. But basically, how translatable is something like sandflats to other aquariums around the world? And Simon has already explained that there's variations of this kind of ecosystem wherever you go. So from a digital perspective,
Yeah.
does that then become an easier project to translate overseas, or is it kind of rebuilding again from the ground up?
Oh, absolutely. So we're a huge fan of collaboration, and that has to do with the fact that we are working with government agencies who have more and more of a limited budget. A lot of zoos, aquariums, museums are funded by government. So they can't necessarily afford huge digital developments. And so it's become obvious to us that it is much easier to develop digital exhibits that can be shared and it can be reskinned. And so reskinning means we are generally splitting things into what are the 3D assets or the 2D elements, what's the graphics basically, like what is what you see and what you hear, and the messaging. And then you have the mechanics, the bit that I would call, the software that sits underneath. And so if I, for instance, have a sandflat ecosystem, the idea of having a cube that you can slice up and see what's in each separate segment of the sand or the water or whatever it is that you want to show, that would be a mechanic, and it could be anything. So if somebody wanted to show how mangroves work, if somebody wanted to show, how wetlands work, we can basically create a system that is based on something we already have. Now, for our clients, government clients, that basically means they don't have to reinvent the wheel. They only have to pay for customization, for changing things in such a way so it fits them. What Simon and I talked about, and other government departments around the world, mainly in Australia, they really like the idea of getting educational messages into the public and into the community as far-reaching as possible. They want to go beyond their borders. They want to go as far as possible. So they're quite excited about taking educational learnings, such as, for instance, sandflat, and spreading the word and getting other people to understand it. And so therefore, our concept has become, well, what if everything we build is co-owned? And what if anyone who wants to, for instance, have sandflat adds something to it? So let's say, for instance, an aquarium in the States also had a sandflat area. And they said, oh my God, we love that. We might change certain animals if they have different animals or different wording or different names. They obviously wouldn't want to have Maori names in the messaging. They might have other indigenous names if they have an indigenous language. But the creatures or the concept could be the same. And then they might kind of like say, we want to add the ecosystem that explains how kelp forests works. Because there is a misconception that kelp forests are easy to grow. At least in the public, there is a misconception, but they're not. You know, they're very hard to establish. So you can explain to the public through an ecosystem, through an augmented reality experience, how a kelp forest might be, you know, what challenges are there to grow them. So, but in that way, you don't have to pay for the entire platform. You might even get some of the content that a different research institute has already done for free, and you just add to it and you just modify it. But you add to it. So what we ask is generally that if somebody wants to use something that already exists and just modify it slightly, that they innovate and they add to it. And that addition, so say for instance, somebody adds a kelp forest frame, that flows then back to everybody else who's contributed. So in that way, we're breaking down the research silo effect. We're bringing people together, not only to collaborate, resources, knowledge, asset sharing, but also we help them co-fund digital exhibits and solutions that help get the messages around ocean acidity, carbon capture, and how that is related to the ocean out there into the public in an easier way. One thing that, yeah, sorry, I should probably give you a chance to ask a question.
I was just, so it sounds kind of almost like an open source kind of approach model.
Yeah.
And I should just say that, and I think I mentioned the front end, but if I didn't, apologies. This is actually the first of a series of webinars, and we are in future editions going to be exploring shared funding and also shared best practice and knowledge. Which is a crucial element to this, not just the collaboration between the aquarium world and the digital world, but also to try and become a safe space, a repository, if you like, for best practice and knowledge transfer among aquarium professionals. So Mel, I have been a little remiss. I haven't actually asked you. Told us a lot about the digital space. Why aquariums? Where does your experience in the world of aquariums come from?
Yeah, that actually, how did that start? It started with a business partner of mine asking me to help with the digital design of a large aquarium project in China, which then led to our famous animatronic dolphin Dell, which was developed by HFX in San Francisco. We were in conversations with Chinese Aquarium, and we realized, as a New Zealand studio, we realized that they were going to have cetaceans on display, live cetaceans. So we tried to convince them otherwise to go with a digital solution. And one of the things we pitched was go animatronic. And the organization, which was Red Star Macalene, was really keen on the idea. And consequently, I started researching and came across HFX in San Francisco. And they had a 20-year-old project sitting in a box. And so we renovated it, we brought it back to life. And 6 months later, we had everybody visit in a San Francisco swimming pool, Dell the dolphin. And one of the caveats was that the dolphin had to be so realistic it would fool the public. Which it did. I remember very, very vividly seeing the teenagers in the water, and all of a sudden a dolphin was swimming towards them in chlorinated water, and they were just horrified until they realized there was a robot, which took a while. Even when they were told this is a robot, they wouldn't believe it. And so people just literally wouldn't believe that this is a robotic dolphin. You may have recently seen that there is an animatronic whale shark in China that they've released, but this is way beyond of anything. Like, that technology is just mind-blowing. It is as real as you can possibly get, and it fools everybody. It's just amazing.
And you said it's 20 years old?
Yeah. Well,
wow.
this is a new version. This is a new
right.
edition. But the technology was around already 20 years ago. The problem has been that a lot of aquariums were just a bit shy to adopt the technology. Mm-hmm. There was still that idea that you have to have real life animals to show to people. But I think the public is changing. They're their opinion of animals in captivity is changing. And so it is a really good step forward to move into animatronics where you can, or digital displays.
I think it highlights the sheer breadth of the scale, I suppose. I'm assuming an animatronic dolphin is considerably more expensive capex than developing an app, for example.
That's right.
But
That's right.
nice to show that it's really just the art of the possible, and anything's possible with the right budget, I suppose. So one of the questions I have, and this kind of started to touch on it, and I'd like to open this up to 2 or 3 of the panelists if I can. It's how can tech add to the live displays and not take away from it? And I suppose the dolphin was one very good example of that. But do you want to expand upon that with other tech?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that we get asked more and more is, do we have to download an app? Could it be something else? And so a lot of people may have heard about the term web AR. So web AR is a great way forward where you don't have to download an app. You just need to scan a QR code, which then starts a browser 3D application or 2D application. So Sandflat Zero is a great example because you can have it as an app or you can have it as a web AR experience that doesn't require downloading anything. And it looks just exactly the same. The only thing that we basically work with our clients on is making sure that the QR codes look unique and are difficult to change or fake, because we do want to keep our players safe. And so we're big advisors of our clients in every shape or form. We want to make sure that our users, get the best experience in every single way.
That's a great answer. Thank you. Simon or Conrad, do you have anything you wanted to add to that question?
Yeah, well, I just did the thought of, as Mel was saying, using QR codes, and if you're putting these into the facilities, it's a good idea for existing facilities, because it means that they don't have to do much change to their facility. So their capital costs there for renovating, for making any large changes, significantly reduced, and it's bringing in extra activities without spending that. Because one of the big problems is anytime we try to do something in an aquarium facility with water is heavy. So it's a large structural load. It takes up a lot of space, and these are all issues that we have when doing a new aquarium, let alone trying to retrofit an existing aquarium. So yeah, digital displays with minimal is best. Obviously, if it's just a QR code with your own device, that means there's hardly anything actually on site to be done. But then even other digital displays which use minimal, projection technology, or use minimal space, less weight than water, it just helps altogether.
So, so what sort of options are available to aquariums if they want to add a digital layer then? I mean, obviously we've seen the example of Sandflats, and Mel, you mentioned apps. Are there any other examples you could throw in?
Yeah, so Simon and I were currently working on a scavenger hunt. And the idea is to make sure that the visitor gets to see everything that there is to see. It might also help a little bit with bigger aquariums to drive the visitors through the journey. But the idea is basically that you have to hunt for QR codes that unlock specific animals for specific ecosystems. So for the scavenger hunt at the Marine Discovery Center in Lee, we are thinking of 4 or 5 ecosystems. So for instance, sandflats, mudflats, mangroves, etc. And in each ecosystem, you would unlock specific animals. Once you've collected all the animals for one ecosystem, we want to go into the next level and allow the user to now see what happens if I take one out. Let's say I remove whales. Let's say whales were to go extinct. What does that do to the ecosystem? What actually happens? What is the purpose of each animal, each plant, mangroves, to the ecosystem? And what happens if you remove them? And then you can take it a step further and you can add in actions that the public can actually take and be aware of, and understands why they need to protect those areas. So that's a scavenger hunt that drives the engagement. Like I remember we talked to Auckland Zoo a long time ago, and they see that parents weren't happy about digital displays that weren't adding to the display. So if it was just collecting cartoon characters, that wasn't it. That's why they didn't come. They can do that at home. So I'm very mindful that everything that we do has to add an educational layer. It has to add to the display. It has to add to the learning. And ideally, it should be in combination with an action and a bit of a penny drop moment for the player.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so one thing we haven't touched on would be security, digital security. I'm a parent. If I'm handing over my device to my children to access anything, I want to make sure that if they are going online, that it's done safely, that I know what they're looking at, that I know who's engaging with them. Are there steps that can be taken to safeguard users, particularly if we're younger users?
Yeah, this is a really good question, and it takes me a little bit back to the whole app versus web AR. So the benefits of an app is that you have the App Store and Play Store using their responsibility to force people who upload apps to make sure that they're meeting family safety guidelines. So that might, for instance, mean that they have to declare if there is marketing in there, if there are links that take them out of the app and into the internet. There are rules that you have to adhere to. When you are guiding them to a website or a web AR experience, those rules are not enforced. So it is up to the developer to make sure that they still adhere to the same guidelines. So I would expect that anyone who is in the educational development area, that they understand how important it is to think about user information, keeping users anonymous, making sure that data that is collected is ethical, and what sort of links or even what sort of protection is there to hack the app or to hack the website. So
Yep.
These are things that need to be looked at, because it is really easy these days. Like if you, for instance, go with something like WordPress and you develop on that, there is a possibility that you could get hacked, unless you've put certain security around it. So it is important to look at what has each software been built on, what are the guidelines around it, what's the safety that's been taken, all the way down to like how are the QR codes displayed. Are they easy to replicate? Could somebody put a sticker over it? Or is it a little bit harder? Can you educate the users to recognize that this is what the QR code should look like? Don't go for something that doesn't look like it.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, well, I've got one question that's come in under the Q&A, and this one is open to the whole panel. And I'm going to ask it and then add something to it, if I may. But what do visitors expect when they come to aquariums these days? Are live displays enough, or do they want more? And to that, I would also throw in a slight curveball, but having two young children, and my eldest is nearly 11, and he's started to develop that. Well, I think they call it TikTok brain. Holding his attention for any length of time is becoming increasingly difficult. So, what's the solution? What do people want now, and what are going to be the aquariums of the future?
Yeah, as I say, we don't believe anymore that the live exhibits are enough, as I said, because people have seen them. People have seen what's every sort of almost any animal that's able to be kept in captive, they've seen. There's no sort of big wow animals left out there that either can be kept or should be kept. So the way to do this is to add these digital displays. And so, of course, there's multiple ways. There's these, obviously, educational apps are always going to be a main part of any aquarium. Every aquarium has an educational program. If they don't, they should, purely for moral reasons, also for their own income, because it draws in visitor numbers through school visits. But some of the other ways that they can accept, do more exhibits is, as I say, there's projection mapping or large digital displays where you're showcasing these animals that can't be kept. Like you can have a big LED wall of great white sharks, interactive, touch screen, swimming around. extinct dinosaurs, just something that draws them in. Again, mentioned before that these VR rides, which are not custom made, but they seem to be going into each aquarium, 5D theaters, just more interaction with the kids.
Does having a digital solution allow you to pivot much quicker and to constantly update the attraction so that you can hopefully encourage as much repeat business and repeat visitors as possible?
I think either Conrad or I could answer that. Conrad, you said it earlier on, QR codes are simple because, they allow for easy changes.
So yeah, QR codes or something along those lines is a fantastic idea to just provide the extra activities without expensive costs.
Yeah, and what I would add to that is basically you can design it in such a way that you can continuously change the facts, so that every time when visitors come, every month you change the facts. Like for instance, we've got a bee game, we've got 45 facts on our database that we can rotate around. So every single time the visitor comes and plays the same game, it's different facts. There's endless information about any of the animals, any of the ecosystems out there. You can keep it fresh. That is something you can build into the experience. And that also promotes conversations between the families. And that's also something that we want. We want them to talk about it. We want them to take it home. We want them to go beyond the aquarium. So what you can also do is by not just kind of like having something that they only do at the aquarium, tie it to something that they can take home. So what if they do have an extension to the experience that they can play home, do further discovery, encourage them to do their own research and learn about it and want to become an oceanographer, for instance, So I'm a big fan of extending beyond just the digital experience in the aquarium. How can you take it home? How can you make it so if it is an app, for instance, I keep it on my phone because I get benefits from it. I can continue playing, I can continue do something, and it might also allow me to learn about, new things that are happening at the aquarium. Maybe they have a sleepover, maybe they have something else, maybe they have, new exhibits. But so it's creating something that keeps the communication to the visitor open and doesn't just end it. And that keeps the conversation within the science open as well. So I think that's really important.
That's a really interesting point. I guess it gives you a level of kind of permissive marketing that you can keep that two-way comms open, and also hopefully encourage users to not uninstall the app and delete it as soon as they finish their day in the aquarium, something that gives them a reason for keeping hold. Now, I just got out of the time and we have 2 minutes until the end, so I'm not sure that we've actually got time for any more questions, but I just wanted to take the time to thank each and every one of you sincerely. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting to all of you. For those of you that have been watching in real time, thank you. For those of you that are downloading and watching this later, I hope you found something interesting. If you have any questions, you can always feel free to drop any of us a line and I will make sure they're circulated and responses got to you. And I would just like to remind everybody that this is the first in a series and we will be covering a variety of topics all around collaboration. So that will cover shared technology, shared development, shared best practice, shared funding, and shared marketing. We will write to each and every one of our guest list and our email list and give them further details once we've got the times and dates locked in, but hope to see you all in the future. And once again, panelists, thank you very, very much for your time.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
Thanks for the conversation, Sam. It's been enjoyable.
It's been very enjoyable. Thank you.